My name is Avery Collins. I'm 33 years old. And the strange thing about the moment your life actually begins to split in two is that it almost never sounds dramatic when it starts. There's no thunder, no music, no cinematic silence that warns you, kindly, that the version of your family you've been protecting in your head is already dead. Sometimes it starts with a photo. Sometimes it starts with a smiling face in an expensive coat, standing on ice under a pale foreign sky, grinning like the world has always been generous to her. And sometimes it starts with a caption so smug, so casually cruel, that your whole body understands the insult before your mind catches up. The post went up on a Wednesday morning. I was at work, halfway through a payroll reconciliation, coffee going cold beside my keyboard, when my phone lit up with a notification from my cousin, Madison Hale. Madison was the kind of woman who believed filters counted as a personality. Everything in her life had to be curated, softened, captioned, and tilted toward envy. Even breakfast with her looked sponsored. In the photo, she was standing on a glacier in Iceland in a bright blue parka, one hand up in a peace sign, the other holding a paper cup of coffee, like she was starring in an ad for expensive irresponsibility. She looked ecstatic. So did everyone behind her. My mother, my father, my aunt Vanessa, my uncle Richard, my younger brother Noah, Madison's sister, Lily, all of them bundled up, flushed pink from the cold, smiling into the camera like this trip had been stitched together by love and luck and family closeness. The caption said, "Best family trip ever. Grateful for the one who made it happen." No tag, no name. Just that. I stared at it for a long time. At first, I had the stupidest reaction possible. I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe the one who made it happen meant God or luck or some travel package deal or one of Madison's vague influencer friends. But deep down, I already knew. That one was me. Not because I had willingly paid for any of it, but because, over the previous 2 weeks, money had been sliding quietly out of my accounts in amounts just small enough to avoid immediate panic and large enough to do real damage if you added them together. $780 to an airline, $1,200 to a guest house, $500 here, $2,000 there, a rental booking, a tour package, spa reservations, transfers, upgrades. By the time I caught the pattern and sat down with my banking app, the total was just under $10,000. $10,000. And the worst part? I had already confronted Aunt Vanessa once before they left. Not directly enough. Not hard enough. But I had asked. I remember that conversation with sickening clarity because of how normal she acted. She had been standing in my kitchen, eating grapes out of a glass bowl like she had every right to be there, while I showed her one of the transactions and asked if she knew why her email had appeared in the merchant notes. She looked confused for exactly half a second, then offended, then amused. "No idea, Avery," she had said, with that gentle, wounded tone manipulative people use when they want your suspicion to feel like cruelty. Why would I have anything to do with your bank account? And because she was family, because I had spent my whole life being the one who kept the peace, because my mother had raised me to think harmony was something women preserved by bleeding quietly, I let her make me feel unreasonable. I didn't push. I told myself I would gather more information first. I told myself I didn't want to accuse anyone unfairly. I told myself all the lies people like me tell ourselves when we already know the truth, but still want to believe love makes it impossible. Then they left for Iceland. 9 people. 9. An entire family trip I hadn't been invited to, hadn't been told about, and apparently had been expected to finance anyway. Do you know what really rots something inside you? It's not just being used, it's realizing they didn't even think they needed to hide how little they respected you. I found out the trip existed in the first place because my supervisor forwarded a time-off request connected to my family calendar sync and asked if there had been some payroll error. That was how I learned my parents were leaving the country. Not from a call, not from a conversation, not from some awkward explanation. A payroll error. I work with numbers for a living. I notice patterns. I notice inconsistencies. I notice when people assume I'm too boring to fight back. But noticing isn't the same thing as acting. At least, not at first. I was still sitting in that numb, ugly space between rage and denial when the text came in that night. It was from Aunt Vanessa, only it wasn't meant for me. Just one sentence. She's too desperate to say anything. That was it. No context. No apology. No attempt to soften it. Just that one line, dropped into my phone like a knife slipped under a door. She, not Avery. Not your niece. Not your family. Just she. A thing. A type. A woman so eager to be loved, so trained to absorb disrespect, that they could steal from her and still assume she would sit there trying to phrase her pain politely. I read that text 4 times. Then I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because something inside me had finally snapped loose. There is a point in some betrayals where the pain burns off and leaves behind something cleaner, colder, useful. I called my bank first. I reported every unauthorized charge. I filed a fraud claim. I froze the compromised accounts and changed every password I could think of. Then I started making other calls. Airline support, the guest house, car rental, tour operators, spa bookings. If it had been paid through my money, my accounts, my points, or my information, I pulled my name off it, one by one. Calmly. Methodically. No speeches. No warning. No dramatic text to the family chat. Not that I was included in one. I didn't want a fight. Not yet. I wanted consequences. When I finally went to bed, I didn't sleep much. My body felt too alert, too electric, as if it knew something irreversible had already happened. At 5:11 a.m., my phone started vibrating across the nightstand. Then again. By the time I sat up and looked at the screen, I had 21 missed calls. My father had called 6 times. My mother, 3. Aunt Vanessa, 5. Madison, 4. Uncle Richard, twice. One unknown international number I later learned belonged to the guest house. Then came the message from my father. "How could you do this to us?" All caps. No hello. No, what happened? No explanation. Just accusation. And somehow that hurt less than I expected. Because by then, it was almost a relief. There it was. The truth, plain and ugly. I had not been stolen from in secret by people who feared getting caught. I had been stolen from by people who believed they were entitled to me. I didn't reply. I made toast, burned one side of it because my hands were shaking. Stood in my kitchen, eating dry bread over the sink, while my phone kept lighting up like a medical emergency. By evening, the collapse had apparently become total. The guest house code stopped working after the fraud report hit. The rental reservation was gone. The tours were canceled. The luxury spa reservation had been voided. From what Noah later told me, they showed up in matching swimsuits and fluffy robes they'd bought for photos, only to be turned away at the entrance, while Madison argued that they had a brand collaboration expectation. I would have found that funny if I hadn't still been fighting the urge to throw up every few minutes. That night, a screenshot reached me through Noah. He didn't add commentary. He never really did. It was a forwarded message from the family group chat, a chat I wasn't in. Aunt Vanessa had pasted the fraud notice into it and written, "Well, I guess Avery finally found a spine." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Not because it surprised me, because it didn't. That was the part that made me feel suddenly ancient inside. How long had this been my role? How many times had they laughed about me after I left the room? How many stories had they told each other about dependable Avery, quiet Avery, practical Avery, the woman who always covered, always forgave, always absorbed. The family came home 2 days early, and 2 days after that, they came to my house. I live alone in a duplex in Portland. It isn't huge, but I bought it myself after years of saving and saying no to things people told me I was supposed to want. Trendier apartment, nicer car, more glamorous life. There had always been family jokes about me being careful, predictable. Built for spreadsheets, Madison once said at Thanksgiving. while asking if I could cover the wine order because I was better with budgets. I opened the door only because they were pounding hard enough to rattle the frame. My mother was in front, my father behind her, already stern. Aunt Vanessa, with her lips pressed into that martyr's line she wore whenever she wanted to pretend she was the injured party. Uncle Richard looking offended on principle. Madison standing back with sunglasses on top of her head like she was arriving for entertainment. Noah off to the side. Quiet. Watching. The first 10 minutes were almost civil, the fake kind. My mother asked why I hadn't come to them before, making things worse, as if I hadn't already asked about the charges, as if I had not literally given them an opportunity to explain. Aunt Vanessa said I had humiliated the whole family. Uncle Richard said I made them look like criminals. That one nearly made me laugh out loud. My father folded his arms and stared at me the way he used to when I was 16, and had disappointed him by refusing to apologize first, just because I was the easier child to pressure. They stayed for hours, talking in circles, trying guilt, then anger, then disbelief, then revisionist history. At one point, Madison scrolled through her phone and showed me photos of waterfalls, volcanic beaches, and candlelit dinners, like I was supposed to mourn the vacation experience I had ruined for them. I didn't offer food. I didn't offer coffee. I didn't ask anyone to sit. They did anyway. My living room started to feel contaminated by their certainty. Then, finally, Aunt Vanessa said the thing that ended whatever fragile restraint I still had. "We think," she said, hands folded in her lap like this was a board meeting, "that you should reimburse everyone for the losses you caused." For a second, nobody moved. Even the room seemed to pause. I looked at her. Really looked at her. At the expensive scarf she probably hadn't paid for herself. At the diamond studs she liked to pretend were heirlooms instead of credit card debt. At the woman who had stolen from me, mocked me, stranded herself in another country with my money, then returned home demanding compensation because I had stopped her. Something hot and sharp moved through me. Not panic. Not grief. Recognition. I asked, very calmly, "Do you want the full list of what you took from me? Or would you prefer I start with the dollar amount?" My mother inhaled sharply. Madison rolled her eyes. Uncle Richard muttered something about attitude. Aunt Vanessa's face changed. Just for a second, the mask slipped. There it was. Not shame, not regret. Hatred. The hatred of a person realizing her favorite target has stopped cooperating. I stood up and told them to leave. Nobody moved. So I picked up my phone and said the next call would be to the police. That got them moving. Slowly. Angrily. My father was the last one out. He turned in the doorway, one hand still on the frame, and looked at me with a kind of cold disappointment that would have gutted me a year earlier. "You think you're punishing us," he said, "but this is only going to make things worse for you." Then he walked away. I locked the door behind them, every lock. Top latch. Deadbolt. Chain. Then I stood there in the silent house, forehead against the wood, listening to their engines start one by one outside. I wish I could say I cried. I didn't. I just stood there, breathing, like someone who had made it out of a fire and was only now beginning to smell the smoke in her own hair. Because the truth was, I believed him. Not the threat itself, but the shape of it. This wasn't over. People like that never accept consequences quietly. And somewhere, deep down, beneath the anger, beneath the shaking relief, beneath the grief of realizing my family had chosen entitlement over love, I knew the next thing they did would be worse. I didn't hear from them for 3 days. No calls, no messages, no passive-aggressive posts I could trace back to them. Nothing. It should have felt like peace. It didn't. Silence, when it comes from people like my family, isn't absence. It's calculation. I blocked almost all of them that first night. My parents, Aunt Vanessa, Uncle Richard, Madison. The only number I left open was Noah's. Not because he had defended me, he hadn't, but because he also hadn't joined in. And in a family like mine, Silence could mean complicity, or it could mean hesitation. I didn't know which one he was yet. On the third day, my phone buzzed once. Just one line from him. They're planning to come back. No explanation. No timing. No advice. Just that. I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over the screen. I almost asked him what he meant. I almost told him not to warn me, unless he was willing to do more than that. But I didn't type anything. I just set the phone down and waited. They came on Saturday, around 2 in the afternoon. I saw the car before I heard the knock. Uncle Richard's white SUV, the same one he always parked like the rules didn't apply to him, angled halfway over the curb, oil stains marking its territory like a territorial animal. My chest tightened, but I didn't move right away. I stood by the window, watching them step out one by one. My mother, my father, Aunt Vanessa, Uncle Richard, and this time, Lily, Madison's younger sister, trailing behind them in denim shorts and an oversized hoodie, looking like she would rather be anywhere else. Madison wasn't there. Interesting. The knocking started a second later. Polite at first, then louder, then insistent. "Avery!" My dad's voice called through the door, like we were still on speaking terms, like this was a normal visit, like they hadn't stood in this same space days ago and demanded I pay them back for stealing from me. I didn't move, not for a full minute. I just stood behind the door, staring at it, feeling my heartbeat in my throat. They knocked again, harder. My mother's voice joined in this time, softer, pleading. "Sweetheart, can we just talk?" That word, sweetheart, landed wrong. It felt like a tool, not affection. I walked to the door slowly, unlocked the deadbolt, kept the chain on, opened it just enough to see them. My mother leaned forward immediately, relief flashing across her face, like she had expected me not to answer at all. "Thank God," she said. "We just want to talk." "No," I said. The word surprised even me. It came out flat, clean. No shaking. No apology attached to it. Her expression flickered. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean no," I repeated. "I already said everything I needed to say the last time you were here." Aunt Vanessa shifted beside her, impatience tightening her mouth. "That wasn't a conversation," she snapped. "That was you overreacting and refusing to take responsibility." I almost smiled. There it was again. The script. The version of reality where I was the problem because I had stopped playing my role. "You've had your say," I told them. "Now leave." My mother's face changed then. Not soft anymore. Not pleading. Something sharper. "We're not leaving," she said quietly. "Not until we work this out." Work this out. As if this were mutual. As if this were a disagreement. As if they hadn't drained nearly $10,000 from me and flown across the world with it. I felt something in my chest settle. Not calm. Something heavier. Final. "You have 10 seconds, I said, "to get off my property." My father stepped forward. "Don't talk to your mother like that." I didn't even look at him. I kept my eyes on her. 10. She took a step closer. 8. Her hand came up and pressed against the door. 6. And then she did it. She wedged her foot into the gap, like this was a movie, like I was going to hesitate because she was my mother. For a split second, I did hesitate, not out of fear, out of disbelief, that she would actually try to force her way into my home. Then, instinct took over. Or maybe it wasn't instinct. Maybe it was everything I had been swallowing for years, finally given permission to move. I shoved the door. Harder than I meant to. The edge of the door hit her foot and forced it back. She stumbled, catching herself on the railing, eyes wide as she looked at me like I had just crossed some unforgivable line, like I had hurt her, For a second, nobody said anything. Then Uncle Richard stepped forward, puffing up like he was about to make a speech. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Camera open. Recording. "I have everything from the last time you were here," I said, loud enough for all of them to hear. "You're trespassing. This is your warning." Not fear. Calculation. "You're really going to do this?" she said. "I already did," I replied. My father stared at me, searching for something. Weakness, maybe. Some sign that this was still reversible. It wasn't. "This is the last time," I said. "The next time you show up here, I won't open the door. I'll call the police." Silence stretched across the porch. Then, one by one, they stepped back. Not quietly, not with dignity, with anger. The kind that vibrates in the air long after people leave. My dad lingered at the bottom of the steps, just stood there, looking at me, trying to make me flinch. I didn't. Aunt Vanessa shook her head as she walked away, muttering under her breath like she was counting reasons I had betrayed them. Lily climbed into the SUV without looking back. The door slammed hard enough to echo down the street. And then they were gone. I left all the lights on that night. Every single one. Not because I thought it would stop them, because something in me didn't want darkness. Didn't want to give them that, too. I didn't sleep. Not really. Every sound felt like a signal. Every passing car made my chest tighten. By morning, I was exhausted. And then I saw my car. The driver's side mirror was shattered. Not cracked, shattered. Hanging by a single wire, like something broken and barely held together. There was a dent above the front wheel. Deep. Narrow. Precise. Not random. Not a drunk person stumbling into it. Deliberate. I stood there for a long time, just looking at it, letting the reality settle into my bones. This wasn't over. It had escalated. I walked the block, knocking on 2 neighbors' doors, asking if they had seen anything. No one had. Or no one wanted to get involved, but I didn't need them, because I had something better. My own camera. I went back inside, pulled up the footage. Scrolled to the timestamp from the middle of the night, 2:43 a.m. There they were, clear as day. Uncle Richard stepping out of the SUV, Aunt Vanessa behind him, my mother standing near the car, arms crossed, looking up and down the street like a lookout. No masks, no attempt to hide. Why would they? In their minds, I was still the same person, the one who wouldn't do anything. Uncle Richard walked straight up to my car, raised something metallic, brought it down in one sharp, efficient motion. The mirror shattered instantly. He hit it again for good measure. Then they all got back in the car and drove off. 2 minutes. That was all it took. 2 minutes to send a message. I watched it twice. Then a third time, not to confirm what I had seen, but to let it sink in, to make sure there was no part of me left that wanted to soften it, to excuse it, to reinterpret it as anything less than what it was. Then I saved the footage, backed it up. Twice. And got dressed. The police station smelled like old coffee and paper. The officer at the front desk barely looked up when I walked in. "Can I help you?" "I need to file a report," I said. "Property damage, and I have video." That got his attention. He took me to a small desk, plugged in my USB, and watched the clip. Once, then again. His expression didn't change much, but something sharpened in his eyes. "Do you know these people?" he asked. "Yes." "Family?" I nodded. He leaned back in his chair slightly. "Do you want to press charges?" The question hung in the air. Simple. Direct. Final. For a second, I thought about everything that would follow. The fallout, the escalation, the point of no return. Then I thought about my car, my bank account, the text that wasn't meant for me, the 6 hours in my living room, the foot in the door, the entitlement, the certainty that I would do nothing. "Yes," I said, no hesitation, no apology. "Yes." 2 days later, things took a turn I didn't expect. The video got out. I don't know how. I didn't post it. I hadn't sent it to anyone except the officer. But suddenly, it was everywhere. A local forum picked it up first. Then a repost. Then another. By noon, there were hundreds of comments. By evening, people had connected the dots. Screenshots of Madison's Iceland posts started circulating alongside the footage. People started tagging her. Tagging Lily. Digging into Aunt Vanessa's social media. Even Uncle Richard's business page. Reviews started appearing. Not lies, just questions. And questions, when they're asked publicly, can be more dangerous than accusations. Because they invite other people to start looking, to start noticing, to start connecting things that were never meant to be seen together. By the time the sun went down, My phone was vibrating nonstop. Messages from unknown numbers, emails, notifications, and then the sound of a car door slamming outside. I walked to the window, looked down, and felt something cold settle in my chest. They were back. But this time, they weren't knocking, they were shouting. I didn't open the door. Not this time. The first time they came back, they wanted control. The second time, they wanted entry. This time, they wanted a scene. My mother's voice cut through the glass first. Sharp. Cracked. Loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "You've ruined everything, Avery." Not, "We made a mistake." Not, "We need to talk." Just that. Ruined. As if the damage started with me. Aunt Vanessa's voice followed, higher, almost hysterical. "Do you have any idea what you've done to us? People are calling us criminals, monsters." I stood in the hallway, phone already in my hand, heart pounding. But not from fear, from clarity. They weren't sorry. They were embarrassed. There's a difference. My father didn't shout. He never did. But when he spoke, his voice carried. "You think you're smart?" he called out. "You think this is going to end well for you? We can sue you for defamation. That video—" I didn't wait for him to finish. I unlocked my phone, dialed, held it just close enough to the door that they could hear the ring. Once, twice. 3 times. Silence fell outside. Heavy. Immediate. The kind of silence that only comes when people realize the game has changed. 911, what's your emergency? "I have multiple individuals trespassing on my property," I said, steady. "They've already caused property damage. I have video evidence. They're currently outside my home, refusing to leave." A pause. Then footsteps. Quick. Disorganized. Retreating. By the time I peeked through the blinds, the SUV doors were slamming shut. The engine roared to life. They were gone before the dispatcher even finished asking for my address. That night, I didn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't fear keeping me awake. It was adrenaline. Something had shifted. Not just in them, in me. The next morning, my phone was still buzzing. Notifications, messages, missed calls from unknown numbers. But I ignored most of it, until one name appeared. "Noah." I answered. "Hey." There was a pause on the other end, long enough that I almost thought the call had dropped. Then, "Can I come over?" His voice sounded different. Not defensive, not neutral. Tired. "Yeah," I said. "Come." He showed up 20 minutes later. No car. No bag, just him, standing on my porch like he wasn't entirely sure he belonged there. I opened the door without hesitation. He stepped inside slowly, glancing around like he expected something to jump out at him. "Thanks," he muttered. I didn't ask questions right away. I just walked into the kitchen, grabbed 2 glasses, filled them with water, and set one in front of him. He didn't drink it. He just stared at it, then at me. "They're losing it," he said finally. I leaned against the counter. I noticed he let out a breath that sounded more like something collapsing than something being released. "They didn't think you'd actually do anything," he said. "Even after the first time. They thought if they pushed hard enough, you'd cave." "I know," I said. He nodded. Slow. Ashamed. "There's more," he added. Something in my chest tightened. "What do you mean?" He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a small USB drive, set it on the counter between us. "They didn't just use your card," he said quietly. "They used everything." I didn't touch it yet. "Define everything," he swallowed. "Your travel account, your points, saved logins. They accessed your profile, used your miles to upgrade seats, book better packages, all of it." For a second, I didn't react. Not outwardly, but inside. Something dropped, hard. "How many?" I asked. "Almost 200,000, he said. 200,000 miles. Years of saving. Careful planning. Future trips I hadn't even taken yet. Gone. Just like that." "And you're telling me this now because?" I asked, keeping my voice level. He winced. "Because I didn't know the full extent until yesterday," he said. "And because He hesitated, then forced himself to continue. I can't stay there anymore. That landed heavier than everything else. You left? He nodded. Packed a bag, went to a friend's place. I couldn't listen to them anymore. Not after... He gestured vaguely toward the window, toward the world outside where everything had started unraveling. Silence stretched between us. Not uncomfortable, just real. Why didn't you say anything before? I asked. He didn't look at me. Because it was easier not to, he said. Because if I said something, I'd have to pick a side. And if I picked a side, I'd lose one. I let that sit, then nodded. Fair enough. He looked up then, surprised. You're not mad? Oh, I am, I said. Just not at you. That seemed to hit him harder than if I'd yelled. He nodded once, then pushed the USB closer to me. There's screenshots on there, he said. Transactions, login history, messages. I didn't get everything, but it's enough. I picked it up, turned it over in my hand, felt the weight of it. Proof. Not just of what they did, but how deliberate it was. This wasn't sloppy. This wasn't accidental. This was planned, calculated, coordinated. Family, working together, not to support, not to protect, but to exploit. I set the USB down carefully. Okay, I said. He blinked. Okay? Okay, I repeated. Then we move forward. Moving forward, it turned out, meant thinking differently, not emotionally. Strategically. I contacted my lawyer the same day. Sent everything. Bank records, video footage, the new screenshots Noah had brought. For the first time since this started, I felt like I wasn't reacting anymore. I was building something. A case. A wall. A line they couldn't cross without consequences. 2 days later, I got a call from a blocked number. I almost ignored it. Almost. But curiosity won. Hello? Avery. My mother's voice. Soft. Measured. Too measured. We need to talk, she said. Not, I'm sorry. Not, we made a mistake. We need to talk. I leaned back in my chair. I don't think we do. There was a pause. Then she adjusted, shifted tone, like flipping a switch. This has gone too far, she said. Everything is spiraling. The video, the comments, people are harassing your cousin, your aunt. This isn't what you wanted, is it? I almost laughed. You think I wanted any of this? We can fix it, she continued quickly, ignoring the question. We can come to an understanding. Work something out. Work something out. Again, same words, different packaging. I'll think about it, I said, and then I hung up. That night, Noah sat across from me on the couch, unusually tense. What did she say? He asked. They want to meet, I said. Make peace. He didn't react immediately. Then, they're lying. I raised an eyebrow. That was quick. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I heard them, he said. A few nights ago, in the backyard. They thought I was upstairs. Something in his voice made me sit up straighter. Heard what? They're not trying to fix anything, he said. They're trying to trap you. The word landed heavy. How? They want you to admit it, he said. That you canceled everything on purpose. That you knew the charges were authorized, even just once. If they get that on record, they think they can flip the whole situation. I stared at him, processing. Of course they would. Of course they wouldn't stop. They're not done, he added quietly. They're just changing tactics. Silence filled the room. Thick. Electric. Then, something in me shifted again. Not fear. Not anger. Something sharper. More precise. Okay, I said. Noah frowned. Okay? Okay, I repeated, already reaching for my phone. Then we give them what they want. His eyes widened slightly. You're not serious. Oh, I am, I said. We'll meet them. Avery. But, I cut in, we do it my way. He studied me for a second. Then slowly, a small, almost disbelieving smile appeared. "You're setting a trap," I smiled back. "Something like that." We chose a coffee shop downtown.
Public. Busy.
Cameras everywhere. I cleared it with my lawyer. Recording? Legal. Setting? Ideal. Noah came with me, but he didn't sit at our table. He stayed off to the side, phone angled just enough to capture everything.
Backup.
Insurance.
Witness.
They arrived 10 minutes late. My father and Aunt Vanessa, no one else. They walked in like this was a reunion. Smiles, light energy, like none of this had happened. Like they hadn't stood in my yard screaming days ago. Like they hadn't smashed my car. Like they hadn't drained my accounts. They ordered drinks, sat down, asked about my work, my health, my life. I didn't respond. Not really. I just watched, listened, waited. Eventually, the performance cracked. Aunt Vanessa leaned forward. "We're willing to make this right," she said. I didn't speak. She continued. "We'll reimburse you," she said. $3,000. 3 out of nearly 10, plus everything else. I tilted my head slightly. 3? "It's what we can manage," she said quickly. "Flights, cancellations, stress." "And in return?" I asked. Her eyes flickered. "There's no need to continue with all of this," she said vaguely. "The reports, the legal side, we can settle this privately." Of course. Of course that was the angle. And then she said it. The one sentence they needed me to respond to. "We all know you canceled everything just to punish us," she said lightly. "You didn't actually think it was fraud, right?" There it was, hanging in the air, waiting. I didn't answer, not a word. I just took a slow sip of my coffee, let the silence stretch, let them sit in it. Then I stood up. "Good talk," I said, and walked away. Noah fell into step beside me once we were outside. Neither of us spoke until we reached the car. Then I pulled out my phone, sent the recording
Directly.
to my lawyer. "We're done," I said quietly. Noah exhaled, long.
Shaky.
"They have no idea," he murmured. I looked back once, through the cafe window, at my father, at Aunt Vanessa, still sitting there, still thinking they were in control. "No," I said, "they don't." The first call came 2 weeks later, not from my parents, not from Aunt Vanessa, not even from Noah, from the detective. His voice was calm, almost routine, like he was confirming an appointment instead of shifting the direction of multiple lives. "We're moving forward," he said. "There's enough here." I stood in my kitchen, one hand braced against the counter, eyes fixed on nothing. "Charges?" I asked. "Yes. Just that. Simple.
Final.
And yet, it felt heavier than anything that had come before, because up until that moment, everything had still existed in a kind of emotional fog. Family arguments, personal betrayal, blurred lines between right and wrong, twisted by years of conditioning. This was clear. Legal.
Documented. Unavoidable.
"What happens now?" I asked. "We start with your uncle," he said. "Property damage is the most direct. The footage helps. Then we move outward from there.
Outward.
Like a ripple or a fracture spreading through glass." He asked for a few more confirmations. Dates, copies, consent to use the recording from the cafe. I gave him everything, without hesitation. When the call ended, I didn't move for a long time. Not because I was unsure, because I was finally certain. Things unraveled faster after that. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. Like a structure that had been hollow for years, finally giving way under its own weight. Uncle Richard's business page disappeared first. Gone overnight. No announcement, no explanation. Just gone. Madison's social media followed. Not deleted completely, just wiped clean. Photos archived, comments disabled. A carefully curated silence where there had once been a constant need for attention. Aunt Vanessa's account went quiet. No more posts. No more vague inspirational quotes about family and forgiveness. My parents? Nothing. No calls, no messages, no attempts to reach me through anyone else. It was like they had all retreated into the same dark room and shut the door, waiting,
hoping,
pretending, maybe, that if they stayed still long enough, this would all pass. It didn't. Noah stayed with me for a while. At first, it was practical, a place to sleep, a break from the chaos. But gradually, it became something else. We talked. Not in one long emotional confession, in pieces, fragments, late-night conversations over takeout containers, half-finished thoughts that trailed off and picked up again hours later. He told me things I hadn't known, small things, patterns, moments where the family had crossed lines before, but in ways that were easier to ignore. A borrowed credit card, never paid back. A shared account, used a little too freely. Stories that were always adjusted just enough to make them sound harmless. "It's always been like this," he admitted one night, staring down at his hands. "Just never this big. Never this obvious." "And no one said anything," I said. He shook his head. "No one wanted to be the problem." I let that sit, then said quietly, "I guess I am now." He looked up at me, and for the first time since this started, there was something in his expression that felt solid.
respect.
"You're the only one who isn't pretending," he said. The money started coming back in pieces. The bank reversed a significant portion once the fraud claim was finalized. My lawyer filed a civil case for the rest. They didn't even contest it. Not really. By then, the criminal side had already started tightening around them. Fighting it would have meant exposing more, saying more, admitting more. So they didn't. They just let it happen. And the travel points? Restored. Every single one. The airline didn't hesitate once they saw the evidence. It was almost ironic. The system I had trusted to protect me had worked exactly as it was supposed to. It just took me finally using it. 3 months passed, then 4, then 5. Life didn't go back to what it was before. It couldn't. But it became something else.
Quieter.
Cleaner. I slept through the night again, stopped checking my phone every hour, started leaving the lights off when I went to bed. Noah found his own place, a small apartment across town. Nothing fancy, but his. We still talked almost every day, sometimes about everything that had happened, sometimes about nothing at all. Normal things.
Work.
Food. Bad movies. The kind of conversations that don't feel like survival, just living. And for a while, that was enough. Then the envelope arrived. Thick. Cream-colored, my name written in careful, looping calligraphy. No return address, no indication of who had sent it. But I already knew. I felt it before I even opened it. That same cold, familiar weight. Like something unfinished, reaching back for me. Inside was a wedding invitation.
Elegant. Expensive.
Designed to impress. Madison Hale. Of course, getting married. In Iceland. Again, I stared at the location for a long time. Same country, same kind of luxury, same carefully constructed image. Like nothing had happened. Like they could just rewrite it. Then I saw the smaller card tucked behind the main invitation. My fingers stilled as I pulled it free. The words were simple. Polished.
Deliberate.
This celebration is made possible by the generosity of our beloved cousin, Avery Collins. For a second, I thought I had misread it. I blinked, looked again. Same words, same meaning. They hadn't just invited me, they had credited me
Publicly.
as the one funding the wedding. A sharp laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. Even after everything. Even after the investigation, the charges, the exposure, they were still doing it, still trying to use me, still trying to write me into their story as the silent provider, still assuming I wouldn't fight back. I flipped the invitation over. The RSVP card was already filled out. Checked. Yes, of course it was. An airline voucher slipped out from between the pages.
Prepaid. Pre-planned. Pre-decided.
They hadn't invited me. They had scripted me. Noah got one too. He came over that evening, envelope in hand, expression somewhere between disbelief and grim amusement. "They're serious," he said. "Very," I replied. He dropped onto the couch, running a hand through his hair. They're telling people we made up, he added, that everything was a misunderstanding, that things are healing. I leaned back in my chair. Of course they were. Of course they would turn it into a narrative. That's what people like them do. They don't fix the damage. They rewrite it. So what are you going to do? He asked. I didn't answer right away, because the truth was, I didn't know. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Throw the invitation away. Let them have their illusion. Walk away clean. But another part of me, the part that had stood in my doorway and said no, the part that had watched the footage and gone to the police, the part that had sat in that cafe and let them talk themselves into a trap, that part wasn't done. They want a story, I said slowly. Noah nodded. Yeah. I looked at him. Really looked at him. At the shift in him over the past few months, the distance he had chosen, the truth he had finally stepped into. What if they get one? I said. His brow furrowed slightly. What do you mean? I leaned forward. What if they get exactly what they want? I continued. A perfect moment. A beautiful setting. Everyone watching. He held my gaze, understanding flickering behind his eyes. Then, slowly, a small, sharp smile appeared. And we tell the truth, he finished. I didn't smile, but something in my chest settled. Yes. He let out a breath. Half laugh, half disbelief. They're going to lose it. Probably, I said. He leaned back, shaking his head. They have no idea what's coming. I thought about that. About the invitation. About the false credit. About the years of quiet manipulation that had led to this moment. Then I stood up, walked to the kitchen, picked up the invitation again, ran my fingers over the raised lettering, the elegance, the performance. And for the first time since it arrived, I didn't feel angry. I felt ready. They had every chance to stop, I said quietly. Noah nodded. They did. I slid the card back into the envelope, set it down on the counter.
Carefully. Deliberately.
Now they get the ending they wrote for themselves. 5 months ago, I was the one who kept the peace, the one who paid, the one who stayed quiet, the one who absorbed. Now I wasn't even at their table. I had built my own. And this time, I wasn't leaving the door unlocked.